Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to be assembling two Bren gun carriers from Universal Carriers from Warlord Games. We're going to do the Mark 1s, and we got some Desert 8th Army metal figures. I've already gone over these guys with an X-Acto knife and trimmed. Oh, I must have missed a few pieces here. And what I've done is I've edited the video down so that I actually recorded this with no sound, and then went back, because it took me more than 45 minutes. It took me about maybe 2 hours. And so I edited it down to about 40 minutes. And now I'm going to add commentary on top of the video. So here we go. I got all the pieces snipped out of the sprue. I've gone over each of the pieces with my X-Acto knife, and I got them set up in two piles because I have two vehicles I'm going to put together. But we're going to start with step one, and you can see this step one is like assemble the whole model. It's not, and so you got to kind of figure out which piece you're going to use first. Now, I always use DAP Rapid Fuse. You know that. If you've been watching or following my videos, you know that for true. Now we've got two Bren guns. I'm going to only build the one on the camera, and the second one I'm going to build off edit, right? I'm going to edit that out. Now I'm trying to figure out which side is which. How does this go together? Because by looking at the instructions, it doesn't exactly say, you know, what numbers of parts on the sprue, like the left or the right side is, but it's not hard to figure out. And that's probably why those instructions are universal, because you don't need any words. All right, now I'm not going to be able to talk straight for 45 minutes. So what I'm going to do is kind of talk, let you watch, and then talk and let you watch. Dry times are very fast with DAP Rapid Fuse. You've got about a 30-second setting time. So I'll have to hold the model together, applying pressure for about 30 seconds, and then it'll catch, and then it'll start drying and setting. Now on some of my models, it sets like immediately, and then sometimes I think it has something to do with the humidity or the temperature in the area. So if it's like a really hot day and inside the house it's really hot, then it sets a lot faster. But if it's cold and the air conditioner's on, then it takes a little bit longer. But it's still no more than ever about 30-35 seconds. But sometimes I'll like build a Napoleonic model or something like that, and after 10 seconds, the arm will be glued on or the head will be glued on. So, yeah, just gotta be careful with it. I really like the DAP Rapid Fuse because when, like, there might be a little excess glue squishing out of the sides or the cracks, but once it dries, all that disappears. It shrinks down and conforms to the model. So I don't know. I just can't speak highly enough about this DAP Rapid Fuse. It's good stuff. I'm glad I discovered it. I've only been using it for about a year now. In the past, I had used Zap-A-Gap. You're familiar with the Zap adhesives, and I was using like the thick gel Zap. Because it didn't run everywhere and you could hold your model in place. And then I found some just regular, like, regular gel super glues, and I've been using those. And then I started using like E6000 because of its thickness. It was like extremely thick, and plus I can build like some of my building models, my wood buildings and stuff like that. Okay, now in this case I'm applying the inner wall, trying to find out exactly like where it slides in and what it connects to and where I'm going to need to apply the glue, because you don't ever want to like build a model and then find out later that you put the part in the wrong spot, right? So I'm like, okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and apply some glue and stick that sucker in there. And you don't need a whole lot. When it comes to this DAP Rapid Fuse, less is more. Actually, it sets a lot faster if if you use it very sparingly. Got to get it in the grooves and slide it down inside, and bam, voila. All right, let me move on to the next one. All right, now we're back to the first one. As you can see in the top of the screen, I worked on the second one as well. And so now we're just putting the tracks on, and you can see the tracks are all just one piece. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, where's the drive? Is it in the front or the back? And how does this go on? And there's a hole there for this to, for the pin to go into. And then there's a pin in the back where the hole in the track goes. So it's kind of, it's a no-brainer. Again, yeah, there's a pin in the back that goes in that hole, and then there's a peg on the track in the front that goes in the hole of the chassis. And the bogie wheels ride on the suspension, and the suspension rides up against or presses up against the chassis. So I applied some glue on the suspension so that it would grip. Pretty easy, self-explanatory. But the tracks do have to snap in kind of tightly to get them in 100%. So I was squeezing a little bit. And now I'm applying the 30-second pressure. And just so you know, I filmed this video probably 6 months ago. And I meant to go back and do a commentary on this video like within a day or two of filming it. So I did. I edited it down, and then I put it into a folder unique so that all the pieces and parts of this video would be in that one folder, and I wouldn't accidentally delete it or anything. And then I forgot about it. And so I came back. Okay, so there, the tracks are on, and yeah, everything looks good. Just got to give it that 30-second dry time. And I'll be right back. And there you go. You've got the other one you can see on the top of the screen again. But I put a mortar team on top of it to give it some weight, some pressure. So I didn't have to sit there and hold on to it. All right, now we're going to continue on with more of the back end. I'm putting it looks like probably the engine housing, transmission. I don't know what actually goes in there. Just trying to figure out how this goes on there, where it's supposed to go. And I'm looking at the back of the hull, the back armor plate, how it's supposed to go on, how the sides are supposed to ride up against each other, and the back. And I said, okay, time to apply some glue. Yeah, when you normally buy the Bren guns, you can buy, when you buy them and they come in their own box set, Bren gun carriers, they come with the standard British infantry soldier, just the standard British guy. Well, these came out of the 8th Army Desert Rats box set, starter army. And so they came with these metal miniatures. So it's a variation. All right, now there's a box in the back that goes from the back hull up to the engine transmission frame there. And it's probably covering the engine transmission down the center of the vehicle. It looks like it goes in pretty self-explanatory. So we're gonna, now there's a slope, as you can see, and the top of the slope, I'm gonna apply some glue. And the top of that slope goes to the front of the vehicle. And then it slopes down to the back. There you go. All right. Don't really have to apply very much pressure on that. It just rides in place. All right. It's starting to look really good. Now there is like a cover that covers this entire thing. It's a T-shape. Covers the engine transmission box and the center panel. And the top of it has like a little grill on it. So you would think that that would be like where you can look down inside and maybe see the transmission or the engine. When I get it on there, you'll kind of see what it would look like. All right, there you go. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, we are back. I don't know why we never really went anywhere, right? Okay, so now I'm assembling the men that go into the driver compartment. They come with their own plastic heads, but again, those are just, those aren't the 8th Army heads. So you get some unique heads to put on your driver and your gunner. Now sometimes it's a little tricky, so you got to hold it in place and you got to really count to maybe 30. Trying not to get any glue on your fingers, because you know how super glue is. If you get it on your fingers, it'll glue like within seconds, and then when you go to move your hand away from the model, it'll stick to your fingers and it just becomes a nightmare. So just try to keep your finger, okay, there must have been a little extra piece of metal sticking up, so I'm going to take my snips, cutting a little bit into the neck so it fits down onto the plastic. There we go, that looks a lot better. Clean my hands so my hands don't stick to the helmet and then press it up against that glue that's inside the neck. Now I do use the super glue kind of like a model filler as well. So if you have a gap between armor plates, or if you have a gap in the neck line, or even the like shoulder seam, like where the arm and the body would connect, if you use enough of the rapid fuse, and when you press the parts together, if there's a gap, if that is filled with glue, when it dries, it forms like a filler, so that when you go to paint it, it'll actually look like that's part of the mold. It'll still be sunken in, and when you go to wash it and all that other painting techniques, it'll actually come out and it'll look like it was supposed to be there. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of it. It's the best glue I've ever used. All right. Finally, the driver. He's got a head. Okay, so I'm going to try to do all these guys. Now, there's like 2 guys in the back that are solid pieces, and then there's a driver and a gunner. So there's like 4 figures for each vehicle. The driver and the gunner bodies are plastic. Now I'm checking out to see where this steering wheel goes, because the steering wheel actually has hands on. You can see there's no hands on that driver, right? It's just holes. There's actually no legs past the thigh. You won't see the bottom of the legs once you've got him sitting in his chair, and the hands go directly on, are already molded onto the steering wheel. Give that about 30 seconds or so. So when you put him down into the driver compartment, it'll look like he's sitting there, steering. All right, we're going to do that. I'm going to dry, and I'll be right back. All right, if you look over to the left, you'll see that I'm doing that over there as well. It looks like I'm using 1 plastic head and 1 metal head. Okay, there's sprue lines, burrs, flash. You got to get rid of all that. Now this guy's already sitting on his seat. You just have to glue the seat down to the driver's compartment, or the gunner's position. There you go. Now he is missing his, well, I should say, it's not missing it. In his right hand, he's gripping a pistol grip, and he has a rifle stock already molded to the gunner. And then what you do is you glue the back end, or the front end of the gun, to the back end that's already molded into the molded into the gunner. So he's got like so the 2 pieces would go together and make it look like he's holding the gun. All right, so there is the front armor plate. there's an extra bogey wheel that you can put. There's a few extra pieces you can put on the Bren gun carrier just in various places. But if you look, they recommend putting that extra bogey wheel right there in the front. Just lay it on the hull like that. Okay, and now we're going to put the front armor plate on the Bren gun carrier. Fits right into position. And then the gun, which I'm using a Bren gun, sticks out the front. I was just making sure that I could do it once I've got the front armor plate glued on. Because if I couldn't do it after I glued the front armor plate on, then I'd have to insert it before I glued the front armor plate. But it looks like there's no problem. I should be able to just glue this armor plate on, and then I'll have enough room to put the weapon through the weapon port. See, doing a little fitting before I apply glue. That's always smart. That way you don't make any mistakes. Yeah, and luckily that Bren plate just goes directly on with no issues. Everything is fitting. So far everything's fitting exactly the way it's supposed to. But there is something towards the end that I did struggle with, and I'll be talking about that. That's the side plates. We'll talk about those when I get to them. Constantly fiddling with it just to making sure all the side plates are pressed up against where they're supposed to be pressed up against, and making sure everything's where it belongs. And I'm taking my finger and taking off any excess glue that might have squished out. Yeah, starting to look good. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, right here I'm applying these. It looks like I'm applying glue to where I'm going to be putting these side plates on. And you can see how they would normally fit. The problem here that I was having was these side plates have these, I don't know, little ridges on them, or little tabs that would go between the track and the hull, and then this should fit snugly against the hull. But in practice, the tracks stick out too far. The actual tread sticks out, and so what I decided to do was take my X-Acto knife and trim the tracks a little bit so that my side panels would fit against the vehicle the way they're supposed to. So I did a little modification of the tracks. If those pieces were optional, and they probably are, you could leave them off and your Bren gun carrier would look just as good I mean, it would look great without them. But I wanted to put them on because the Mark 1 had these little rounded fenders in the front. The Mark II has these, they're more angular. Did you see the tab as I flipped it over? Okay, those tabs and the tracks interfered with each other. I don't think that the tabs are supposed to fit over the tracks or under the tracks, but they might, and but the tracks themselves is what was in the way. You saw that I had to trim some of the track off to get the fender to fit right, and even then, they looked like they were angling out a little bit too far. So maybe a little bit more trimming, or cutting the tabs off, or just fiddling around with it until you figure out exactly how that goes. But I struggled with it. I struggled with it for a good amount of time before I settled on cutting and cutting the tabs off. Actually, I think I did that as well. Okay, now when you look at those fenders, you can see that they're kind of, the right one is kind of flat and the left one is kind of angled out a little bit. Yeah, I was not 100% satisfied with that. It looks good. It looks fine, but, and the other Bren gun carrier up there, it looks good as well. But that's a lesson learned. That's a lesson learned that I'm sharing with you. So when you go to put it together, you might actually have to cut more of the track off than I did. All right, so now I'm putting these spotlights, headlights, I should say, on the Bren gun carrier. They're these big, huge battery-operated, I think, boxes that there's one on each side, and they're big. I mean, yeah. Now, you don't see those on the Mark II. You see those only on the Mark I. All right. Once you get them in position, just let it sit and dry for about 30 seconds because it'll set even without pressure. Just making sure all the flash is off of it before I start gluing it on. Because you want it to be a flat bottom when you glue it onto the fender. Fiddly parts, that's one reason why I need those tweezers. I wouldn't consider these to be the most fiddly parts because that's a big 1/2-inch size spotlight. It went on pretty straightforward. All right, let's move on to the next part. Yeah, and again, you can see the other Bren gun is coming along nicely as well. Okay, what we're doing now is we're going to glue this back compartment, this back panel. I don't know what it is. The back side of the engine. Maybe it's an exhaust. Maybe it's a work compartment. I wish I was familiar enough with a Bren gun carrier to tell you what all the parts were. But it sits on the back. It looks like a little radio box or maybe an exhaust cover. And just knock the light off. Knocked the fender off. I took the back off to reglue it because I wasn't satisfied the way it was riding against the back panels. All right, so now there is a machine gun, an anti-air machine gun that sits on the top of the machine, and it has a pintle mount, or like a tall pole that sticks out of the top of the hull, and then the machine gun rests on it or rides on it, and it's a little off-center when you glue it on the back. It's so I guess the guy standing inside the left side compartment can actually man the machine gun. It's not centered because then you couldn't get to the machine gun. And you just got to hold it and let it dry before you go to the next step. All right, now we're going to put the Bren gun machine gun out the front. And remember, the back side of the machine gun is cut off. So it has to glue against the gunner under his right armpit. There's a buttstock. And once you put it in and glue it onto that buttstock, then it will look like one solid machine gun. Okay, gonna trim it, make sure it doesn't have any like extra flash or burrs. Which I thought I did this all the way up and down every piece, but sometimes you miss. Sometimes you notice things as you're putting it together. Making sure I put some glue on the back of it where it's going to connect to the gunner. Okay, now we're going to get the barrel with its bipod sticking out the front hatch. It's a little tricky because the bipod's got like a little hook on it. All right, now I got to find it where that backside goes so I could set it right there on his underarm. Right there. Yeah, I was putting it a little too high, so now we're lowering it down a little bit. Now it's in the right position. All right, now there's a machine gun that sits on that pintle mount. There's an actual half disc that fits down inside the pintle to make it look like it's on a swivel. And then what I did was, instead of like locking it in a horizontal position, I put it more of in a traveling position. So I swung it down so that the bottom of the machine gun was actually resting on the plate. There you go. Like that. All right, now let's put these metal guys in. There are 4 of them, and there's 2 vehicles. So I was going to put 2 in each vehicle, and I had to try to figure out which one was going to go into what vehicle and where. So I decided to put him. He's looking forward. He's just riding, just resting. Right? And like one of the guys is in a seated position with his hand on the side plate like that. And he'll fit, or I could slide him all the way forward where his hand is on the front plate, or trying to find the best looking position to make it look more, what's the word? Realistic, and also the most animated. See, he is reaching forward, so I have him gripping the front plate. Yeah, and just let gravity put the miniature down into position. There we go. That looks good. Now in this other Bren gun, which is made pretty much exactly the same, there's a radio. Or have it facing backwards. And yeah, he should go in there like that. Also, and I pushed him as far forward as I could to make room. But you'll notice, like on one Bren gun, the driver has the metal head, and then on the other Bren gun, the gunner has the metal head. It just gives diversity a little bit when you're driving, or when you're modeling. You put them both on the table, they will look slightly. The illusion will be different. People will go, "Oh, look, they're different because that, for reasons." Okay, now this is the most. This guy here was the most challenging, because you notice he had a slit under his butt, right? It's a slit, And that slit doesn't come from sitting on one of the side chairs. That comes from sitting on the actual back of the back hull, the plate, or the side hull, depending on how you wanted to do it. But the way his hands were and the way his facing and posture was, I decided to put him on the back hull. He's got a Thompson. He's safe, throwing safety to the wind. He's not really inside the armor. Yeah. He just looks cool as hell. It's Rambo. The British Rambo. So I fiddle around with it a little bit. I think one foot should be hanging down. But I don't remember exactly what I did with him. We'll have to watch and see. Remember, this was 6 months ago. I put it on the slit. I tried the side. That didn't work. Okay, where do these legs go? Okay, that looks good. I said, why does he have one leg hanging straight down and one knee bent? Probably because that one knee bent is probably on the chair, where the one straight down is probably to the left of the chair. It's hanging down into the compartment. That's what I think. Like, maybe he goes inside. No, I don't think so. I should edit all this out so you don't see me actually not knowing what I'm doing. No, this is exactly what my mind process was, where does this guy go? Because in the instructions, it doesn't show. It doesn't show anywhere. You have to just figure it out. I think I wound up putting him like that because stability. Because I wanted his foot to glue down. It wouldn't. It would have been dangling in midair. And so I think I glued him down to the chair like that so that his butt would be glued and the foot would be glued to give you more of a 3-point stance so that it wouldn't. So he would be sturdy on the back and not just fly off or break off or something like that. Because I was making these for sale. I wasn't making these for my personal use. I did post these up on eBay. And I have some pictures here after I finished painting them. And that's coming up real soon at the end of the video. Yep, they're both pretty much done. Now I just have to paint them. So I'm going to let these guys dry, and then we're going to paint them. All right, so what I started to paint them with is, I think this is Krylon Camo Khaki. Yeah, the 8th Army guys, I prime with khaki, and then I go in and I paint them like with some desert yellow from Vallejo. Yeah, so let's go ahead and prime these up. And then this is after I finish painting them. There you go. I got some sand for the tracks. Painted these guys up flesh. Gave them black berets. Gave them some rust. Yeah, the number 26 and number 25 or 35. Gave them a serial number on the side there. These are all decals that came with it, so that's not a problem. And then the red and white, there needs to be a decal for that, but there's not, so you got to hand paint that. And getting down to the bottom, their boots and their shoes on the guys that are with their legs all the way inside of the vehicle was a little challenging, but we got it. Got the shovels and the axe pick and stuff like that on the back. The guy sitting on the edge there with his Thompson. His hand on the ledge. These guys look pretty good. And look at the fenders. The fenders look pretty good. You just got to cut those tracks out of the way. Yeah, guy on the radio. I think these came out really well. I look forward to doing some more of these. There's a close-up. I'm going to do more close-ups. You can see the grill on the back of the engine compartment thing that I was talking about. When I was doing the rust, I actually hit the guy's helmet. That's fine. His helmet's got a little rust on it. I think I could have done a little bit better on the berets, but that's okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and checking out this construction assembly video. And even though I did this like 6 months ago. All right, and I will see you next time.